Let me just tell you a little bit more about what you can expect here. First of all, remember that basically the main preeminent theological underpinnings of our understanding of what the Eucharist really is proceed out of here, John chapter 6. Right? Anytime you do any research, anytime you're going to see Paul's writing to the Corinthians, and you're going to see preeminently John chapter 6. Okay? This is the chapter studied by Thomas Aquinas, by Augustine, by Ambrose, by all the great fathers of the church. This is the chapter that is spoken to of length by the documents of the Council of Trent, by the documents of Vatican II. You know, anytime you speak of the Eucharist, you are quoting this chapter right here, John chapter 6. Now remember, in the Gospel of John, unlike the three other synoptics, there is no institution of the Eucharist. If you notice, there is no Last Supper. There's a Last Supper, but there's no institution of the Eucharist like there is in the other Gospels. You know, in Luke, you have him taking the bread, blessing it, and saying, "This is my body," etc. You don't have that in John. Why? Because John knows that you've read the other three Gospels, and he's finishing up, and he's giving you something else that happened there. He doesn't mean for the foot-washing ritual that he details at his Last Supper to take the place of the institution of the Eucharist, but he knows that you already know what the Eucharist is because you've read the other three Gospels. You've read the institution. Okay? John is more worried, as usual, to go deeper and to give you the spiritual meaning and the theological foundation for what the Eucharist is. And so he shows himself once more to be the gospel that complements and brings and deepens and explains a lot of the things that you have read in the other three Gospels. Now, the one thing I want you to see is that when Jesus invites the crowds and the Jewish leaders and us, by extension, to partake in his flesh and his blood, he doesn't back down from the conclusions that are drawn by the people around him. Because what happens? He says to them, either you eat my flesh and you drink my blood, or you have no life. And instead of them saying, weird symbol, but we'll go with it, they're interpreting him what? Literally. They're saying, now wait a minute. At the end, the last question is, how can this man give us his flesh and his blood to drink? They know exactly what level he's speaking at, and it is a literal level. It is not a symbolic level. Jesus speaks at symbolic levels elsewhere. He'll give you a metaphor. He'll say, I am the vine. I am the way. I am the good shepherd. I am the gate, right? He speaks in metaphors many times, and then he explains what he means. Here, he's speaking very specifically, literally, about what it means to consume his flesh and his blood. He's not talking about a symbolic interpretation. So we're not talking about a horizontal fellowship meal where we're all warm and fuzzy and we all connect and this is all us. It's more the vertical element that's being emphasized here. The relationship between God and man through the Eucharist, brought all the way down where heaven meets earth. The implications are so radical that many of the disciples do what? They leave. The Greek word is skandalon, obstacle. They are scandalized. They're horrified, really would be a better translation. And does he call them back and say, guys, I was just symbolizing? You are so primitive. How on earth could you really think that I meant to really consume my flesh and my blood? Is that what he say? Does he say, guys, come on back, let's talk? No. He lets them go, doesn't he? Because he understands that their level of comprehension is such that it's going to take a while. Should they get it, if anything. Okay? As a matter of fact, he goes back to his remaining friends and he says, are you also out of here? Will you also leave? Now, what you also have to see, though, is the prohibitions against consuming blood. If you remember, if you were with us during Moses, you remember there's one thing you don't do, and what's that? You don't eat blood. You don't consume blood. You don't touch blood. You don't even touch a dead corpse, right? You have a very elaborate set of rules as to what you can eat and what you can't eat, and nothing that has blood in it can you touch? So an invitation to drink blood is what? Horrifying. Let's say you're a devoted Jew and there's an instant horror, recoil, God forbid, right? So you can't fault them for their reaction. You know, on a purely human level, the Mosaic command is given again and again and again and again. The horror against consuming any form of blood or eating dead bodies. Genesis 9:4, Leviticus 19, 10 through 14, Deuteronomy 12, Deuteronomy 28. They're those things that get drilled into you when you're a little kid.